Hello everyone, it's Monday the 14th of December. This is episode 99 of the Meet the Farmers podcast and I'm Ben Eagle. There's loads in this week's feature, so we're going to dive straight into that. Last week I spoke to Leicestershire farmer Joe Stanley.
It's Farmer.
This evening, I am speaking to arable and beef farmer Joe Stanley, who is based in Leicestershire. Joe is a third-generation farmer working for his family farming business, which consists of 290 hectares of arable cropping and grass. This includes the Blackbrook herd of pedigree English Longhorns, and unlike many farms, it also hosts a gallery, which is not your typical diversification, but that's the Blackbrook Gallery, which specialises in 19th century paintings of animals. Joe also has many hats off the farm. He's a trustee of the Plumb Foundation. He's on the steering committee for the East of England Farming Conference. He's the NFU branch chair for North West Leicestershire and the NFU county vice chair for Leicestershire, Northamptonshire and Rutland. You might also know him as a regular columnist for Farmers Weekly, Farm Business, Farmers Guardian, Agronomist and Arable Farmer, and NFU Countryside. And in 2020, he was awarded the NFU's Meurig Raymond Award. Joe, I have no idea how you have time to do all that, but thank you so much for giving me some of your time for coming on the show.
No, thank you very much for having me. That's very kind. It's a strange list of things to hear read back to you all at once. I think probably need to free up some time.
Maybe. Tell us about your part of Leicestershire first of all, and what it was like growing up there.
I'm very lucky on my farm. We farm on the edge of what's called the Charnwood Forest in North West Leicestershire, and it's an absolutely beautiful part of the world. It really is. I think it's supposed to be sort of the southernmost spur of sort of the Peak District. So we've got some very dramatic landscape on our farm. Then it slopes off down to sort of much more sort of normal lowland arable ground. So we've got some real extremes on our farm of soil type and everything else. But it's a really gorgeous place. And it was a great farm to grow up on. You know, every farm's a good farm to grow up on, isn't it? But it's a really lovely part of the world.
Wait, your school. So you went to Loughborough Grammar School, and by the looks of the number of A's and A stars on your CV, you did pretty well at school.
Everyone just makes those things up these days, don't they, right? Yeah. I enjoyed school from an academic point of view, but I was thoroughly on the bottom rung of the social ladder. I was a founder member of the school science fiction society and magic club. So I didn't play any sport, and I was sort of around my teenage years into my early 20s. I was sort of morbidly obese. So I was very with a bowl haircut. I had a very fetching bowl haircut. And my mother still bought all my clothes. So I was school was an interesting time. I enjoyed the academic side of school, put it that way.
Okay. And what about the farm at that age as well? Did you did you have any interest in it?
So I think like most kids growing up on the farm, it was great, wasn't it? It's the sort of best place in the world to grow up. And I always wanted to be a farmer right up until about the age of 16 when I had the first. I had my first proper harvest on the farm. And at that time, we were running a big arable contracting business.
Yep.
And my first proper full, 90, 80-hour weeks. And all my friends, none of whom were farmers, were all off doing whatever it is that 16 and 17-year-olds do at that time of year. So no holidays and all this sort of thing. And frankly, it turned me right off. I remember it now. I still remember it to this day. After the first day, the utter shell shock of coming back in after like the full proper farming experience.
Yeah. The dust.
Yeah, and just being shouted at by the foreman and all this sort of thing. It was like, actually, this is not great compared to just playing around for the first 16 years of my life. So actually, from when I was 16 right up into my mid-20s, I had no interest in farming actually, and I really had absolutely no intention of going back to the farm, and that's why I didn't have any thoughts of going to agricultural college or anything like that. So I went to Durham and did a history degree instead.
So yeah, you went on rock and roll farming back in 2019. It's only a couple of years ago now, and you describe in that recording the path you took after your degree, including deciding to join the army, and living and working in London for a time, organising conferences. We won't go into the detail of it simply because, listeners, you can go back and listen to Joe's episode on rock and roll farming. But I'm interested about what you think you learned about yourself during that time.
So I always make very clear, I spent 6 months at the Royal Military Academy Sandhurst, so I never commissioned into the army. I wouldn't claim to have sort of managed that huge achievement. What I did learn from my time there, though, was I think it was very important to me. Basically, I went from university not knowing what I wanted to do, and it just came to me. I'm going to join the military. Decided to join the army, and as I said, sort of alluded to earlier, at this point I was incredibly overweight, unfit, never played sport, never.
Which is so dare say it's unbelievable to look at you now, really, to think that.
Well, thank you. Well, it's very very generous lighting, I think, perhaps in here. But so it's yeah. I don't know why I decided to. I just wanted to make this big change, and I sort of managed to get into the army, and then to do 6 months of Sandhurst. And I think really what I learned was that if you really do put your mind to something, if you're incredibly motivated to do anything, I think anyone can achieve, whatever they want to achieve. Because for me to have gone from sort of the state I was in, if you like, to have actually managed to pass the Sandhurst entrance exams within about 6 months. I sort of lost 5 stone in 6 months, and
wow.
Put on trainers for the first time in my life, and I was incredibly shy and all this other sort of stuff. And again, I'm not quite sure what made me want to do this, but I made the decision, and I just put all my effort into it, and I achieved it. Unfortunately, eventually, I think I pushed myself to the absolute limit, which I think was a great thing for me, because I'd never pushed myself up to that point. I think then, I've realised subsequently I pushed myself past my limit at that point. If I'd have come to it, earlier in that decision earlier in my life, given myself a year or 2 years to get ready, I think I would have been okay. But you can achieve great things if you really put your mind to it. But I think I did push myself slightly too far in that circumstance. But it really did give me a lot of confidence in sort of myself. I saw things in myself having gone through that experience I'd never seen before. And then I went down to London, and again I wasn't ready to go back to the farm after I left the army, so I went and worked in London in sort of something completely different again, because that's where all my friends were. And I think I realized there that that job for me, it wasn't very meaningful. I wanted to do something that was meaningful with my life, and I'd seen the military as being an incredibly meaningful occupation, and I see farming as being a really meaningful occupation. That's what really appeals to it, about it for me.
Yeah. So you're on an AHA tenancy, and you're the third generation to be back on the farm. Take me back to the day when you decided that you're going to go back home. Why did you start thinking about potential new career in agriculture, having turned away from it for so long?
Well, again, I'd like to, at this point, be able to say something inspiring, but honestly, I'd sort of, I'd spent a year in London, and it had been fine, but I decided to leave that job, and to go back to the farm. And to be fair, the reason was, sort of the opportunity was there. It kind of felt like now or never. But I didn't do it with any great enthusiasm. There hadn't been an epiphany that meant, I must go back to the farm. But I thought, well, if I don't do it now, it might not happen. And, if I don't enjoy it, I can always leave. I can always go and move on to the next thing. I didn't see it as a sort of a commitment for life. If I started farming, then that was it. I was stuck in that path. Now, of course, that was 12 years ago, and I'm still here. So I guess in the end, it did all turn out for the best. But no, for me, there was no great big passionate moment when I sort of decided this is the life for me. I've been doing it for 12 years now, and I'm very glad that I did make that decision. But it was a rational decision rather than an emotional decision, really.
Tell me about the arable side of your business, which is the core business, and what you're trying to achieve with it at the moment, especially, dare I say, in the light of industry and policy change over the next few years.
Yeah, so we've got about 700-acre farm altogether, and we've got about sort of 500 acres, 550 acres of arable, and it's not the most productive ground in the world. It really isn't. So what I was trying to achieve until the last sort of 18 months, 2 years, was to really cut down on inputs. We were doing precision applications, variable rate seeding. I was really trying to cut down on plant protection product use, especially fungicides. We were spending 20-25 pounds per hectare on wheat fungicides, which is that's a really stingy amount, but we were really happy with the results. Lots of roguing, lots of IPM to try and get on control of grass weeds, reduced cultivations, trying to do all the good stuff that brings. But frankly, with the arable, frankly, these last 2 years have absolutely knocked it for six. We've had 3 devastating droughts here. We've had all these incredibly wet weather, winters and autumns, and we only got half the farm drilled up last autumn when we should have got the whole thing put into autumn crops. So unfortunately, a lot of the good work that I was trying to do has been absolutely not for six by that extreme weather. It has really badly affected us in the last 2, even the last 3 years. We are wondering now, how future-proof is our farming methods, how future-proof are our arable methods, and that's really something I'm trying to get my head around now, because we can't keep really doing the job that we have been sort of left with in the last couple of years, of poorly established crops, if they get established at all, and sort of record low yields.
Yeah.
So challenging times for our own, but we're only a small arable unit, so potentially looking forward, how viable is 500 acres of arable on fairly marginal land? That is a huge concern of me at the moment.
What have you got in the rotation this year?
So this year, we've dropped oilseed rape this year altogether. We're currently going to be growing this year. We're going to be winter wheat, winter barley, spring oats, winter beans. So five crops in the rotation, which actually, having dropped oilseed rape and having a wider rotation, I do actually find it an exciting challenge. I've never grown oats, I've never grown beans. And it's trying to find that thing that replaces the oilseed rape in the rotation, of course, which for us was a very profitable crop until recent years. But it is looking on the bright side. I'm looking forward to growing these new crops and to having a new experience and seeing what we can make of it.
Let's turn towards the Longhorns. It was your mother who started with them, wasn't it?
That's right. So when I went to school in '89, she needed a new project because I'd been a very sickly child. So she needed something to keep her mind off me being at school. So she got herself some Longhorns, which are a local breed. And they were originally sort of improved by Robert Bakewell, who was a local.
Yeah, of course, you got local. Yeah, you got local Robert Bakewell. Yeah,
absolutely.
Heritage,
So so she went into the Longhorns, and that's really my parents' big passion. This herd of Longhorns. So we've got about 150 now. They are the most pampered Longhorns in creation. Whereas of course most people use Longhorns as a heritage grazer type thing. Ours are all housed for 3-4 months, however long winter lasts. That's how long they're housed for. Money is no object when it comes to the well-being of the Longhorns. But they are a pedigree herd sold for pedigree purposes. So although they make magnificent beef, they do need to be top notch. So our Longhorns are my parents, especially my mother, has done a lot. I would say to improve the breed over the last 30 years.
I mentioned in the intro a quite unique diversification on the farm, and that's the art gallery. How did that come about?
Well, again, I can't take any credit for that. That must have been about 15 years ago, probably. That was set up by my parents because they had a great passion for the old. They're called naive paintings of farmyard animals from primarily the 19th century. We all know the big fat square cows or pigs or And they had, started to privately collect in a small way ones of Longhorns to sort of feed their passion for the breed.
Yep.
And then that eventually led on to them becoming sort of the really the only dealers in that sort of art. So we have a gallery on the farm, and they go around doing art fairs and things. And, to be fair, for us as a business, it's an absolutely critical diversification.
Right.
It really is.
Okay.
Of course, at a time like this, it's taking a hit, the same as the farming, unfortunately, at the moment.
That's interesting.
As a sort of a premium product, perhaps people aren't looking to purchase at the moment.
Before we look at your off-farm interests and broader industry ambitions, I'd like to know more about your plans for the farm over the next few years. Will you be making any changes, or will it be business as usual, or are you not quite sure yet?
Well, we're not quite sure what we're going to do. We know we're going to have to do something. We're already doing things on a small scale. For example, we started selling our meat, directly to the customer, and we have a few other small projects in the pipeline that we're hoping to do in the next 12 months. I think realistically, we all know the situation coming after the transition period ends, and once we start to move away from direct payments, which will mean that the food that we are producing on the farm eventually will, the production of that food will no longer be subsidized in any way, shape or form by the public purse. Now, whatever the rights or wrongs of that will obviously, that will lead to huge change within the industry. And a farm like ours, sort of 700 acres of mostly tenanted land, we're going to have to find the next big diversification to keep us really going. I would say, we've already got a very good one with the gallery, and we sell embryos and semen around the world from our Longhorns, which is another diversification, which is slightly unusual. But there's no doubt about it. We won't be able to survive on a 700 acre tenanted farm with the removal of BPS as things stand. I think we will certainly need to have a big diversification on top of the ones we've already got. I've got some ideas, but I think I am guilty, as perhaps many farmers that might be listening to this are, of perhaps burying my head in the sand for the last 2-3 years. We've known what's coming, but I think a lot of us have frankly been very busy farming a farm which has kept generations of farmers entirely occupied before us, and all of a sudden now we're being told not only have we got to continue with that, but we now need to start setting up our own sort of large scale, perhaps public facing enterprises in order to really subsidize our own food production.
Yeah, so you're a trustee of the Henry Plumb Foundation, which is all about helping young people 18 to 35 who are passionate about making a future in agriculture. Tell me about the work of the foundation and how you got involved.
So absolutely, the Henry Plumb Foundation does a really wonderful job. It's founded by Lord Henry Plumb, who of course is a former president of the NFU, and also president of the European Parliament, which he's the only Briton to have held that position, random fact. But Lord Plumb approached me back at the start of 2019. I think he'd seen some of the articles I'd written in Farmers Weekly and such like, and he was looking, I think, for someone slightly younger to join his board of trustees, because of course it's all about young people between sort of 18 and 35. And he is passionate about helping new entrants, people with no background in farming, or possibly people from farming families who have perhaps lost out in the lottery of who gets to succeed to the family farm. And he is all about, and the foundation is all about, helping these younger people who are passionate about getting into the food and farming industry. And we provide grant funding, but perhaps more importantly a mentor specific to their requirements, who will then pair them up with, and they will provide mentorship and to really try and help the young person to grow in their business plan that they will bring to us. Or perhaps they're just after money for training that they will find really useful to setting up their future career. So we have an awful lot of people. Perhaps our most bread and butter type applicant is someone who's looking to start their own flock of sheep up. and they need money for handling facilities or to expand their flock. But we get everything from people who want to become quail farmers, to people who want to, I don't know, set up a burger van. As long as it's got a connection to British food and farming, it's something that we're really interested in helping people with, because Lord Plumb recognises that it's incredibly important to help that next generation into the industry, because we all know about the figures around the average age of the average farmer, etc. And if we don't have that new young talent coming into the industry, and these guys are incredibly passionate about their entry into the industry, and it sometimes makes me feel very ashamed of my sort of cynical view on perhaps where we're being pushed as an industry by the current sort of political situation. I've got a 700-acre farm that I was born into. I'm an incredibly lucky recipient of the good old-fashioned art of nepotism. Whereas these guys, many of them are coming from absolutely nowhere, and they're just desperate to get their little bit of grazing and a few sheep on it. And it's great to be able to help them with that. And it really does, it'll put me to shame. I feel ashamed that I'm so cynical about things sometimes when you talk to these people who are just so full of passion for what they want to do.
Yeah. And if any younger listeners are interested in the foundation, where should they go? How do they find out more?
So Henry Plumb Foundation, we're on Twitter, we're on Instagram, Facebook. We're not on TikTok. I don't know what TikTok is.
Come on.
Or go to our website, just Google Henry Plumb Foundation, and all the information that you need to make an application is there. But we're sort of seeing a lot more people now getting to know us, and it's great to see those applications sort of rising in number every year. And we really do try and help everyone that we can.
Let's talk Brexit. We're a few weeks away now from the end of the transition period. What does your crystal ball tell you, Joe, for what life is going to be like on the 1st of January?
Well, I could try and make a very good guess, and by the time this comes out, if I'm right, I'll look like a genius. If not, which is more likely. So I don't know. I don't know what we're going to end up with by the time this comes out. Hopefully we will finally have. We're talking now the first week of December. Hopefully by the time we actually get to the 1st of January, we will know what is actually going to happen to us. But I think regardless of that, whether we have a trade deal with the EU or not, we're clearly going to be entering a period of enormous flux in the next few years. I don't think anyone could disagree with that. Whichever side of the argument you were originally on, there is clearly a huge amount of change which is going to occur in the industry in the next couple of years. From my point of view, of course, there's always going to be opportunities, but certainly in the short to medium term, I would say for the majority of British farmers, it has to be said that there's going to be more challenges than there are opportunities in the coming years. I look at what we're sort of the perfect storm of what's coming. We're going to be looking at increase of standards of increased regulations, more expensive food standards in this country. Now that's to be welcomed, and that really is what we have to pride ourselves on in this country. But on top of that, we're of course looking at reduced public support through BPS being phased out by 2027. We're looking at potentially an incredibly bad trading relationship with our largest trading partner, and then potentially trade liberalization with some of the big agri-food exporters from all around the world. If you put those four things together, there will be, few enough farmers, I think, whose businesses will thrive in those circumstances. And of course, add to that, the weather, our increasingly extreme weather, which, for my business has played absolute havoc with our finances in the last 3 years. Frankly, looking forward, it's difficult to see the silver lining from, it's difficult to see a Brexit dividend at this point.
Yeah, I mean, on a local level, in Leicestershire, what's your view of how farms in the county are going to be affected specifically, if in any way?
Well, we're a big mixed farming area. You know, we're right in the middle of the country. There's a hell of a lot of mixed farming enterprises here. You know, we're a mixed farming enterprise ourselves. Again, if you look at DEFRA's own figures, you know, it's those mixed farming enterprises along with upland sheep who are going to be most badly affected by both the trade situation and the removal of BPS. It would be nice to think that DEFRA is aware of these circumstances, and that you know, future policy, which of course we don't have the actual detail for yet, will actually be tailored to take account of the fact that you know, we can't run our businesses on you know, on public goods. We can't run our businesses on sort of you know, good thoughts, and frankly, you know, in many cases greenwashing. Farmers run businesses that need to be solvent. And if you take away, you know, what is for the average British farmer more than 60% of their income, and you don't replace it with anything, and food prices don't go up, and you're asking farmers to continue to feed the nation, subsidising it out of their own pockets and from, as we've said before, diversified enterprises. So, you know, I think it's more important than ever now for farmers to be putting the case forward through their representative organisations, and, you know, in person to their own MPs and to the public, why it is that what we do is important for society. You know, yes, we produce food, we also look after the environment, but we must not allow ourselves to just become, you know, park keepers, because the food element of farming, which I don't think you would have to say in really any other country in the world, is incredibly important. But it seems to be something which sadly we are in danger of forgetting in this country.
You're a talented writer, and I'm sure that lots of listeners enjoy reading your various columns. How do you find your inspiration for material, and what do you think you'll be writing about in 2021?
Well, there's no shortage of material to think about these days, is there? I mean, it writes itself these days. I mean, I guess I most enjoy writing about the sort of the political situation and you know, the antics that go on there. But you know, this is really just a start, isn't it? You know, from January, we're still going to have the whole of future agricultural policy really up for grabs, and there's going to be a lot of work to do there to try and do everything we can as farmers to try and influence that. So I guess I'll be coming back to that time and again. I guess we'll probably be talking about a new DEFRA secretary. I mean, it's about time we had a change, isn't it? I mean, we've had, what, 5 in the last 4 years, so I guess it's probably about time for that. That's not an announcement of a new reshuffle. I'm not on the inside curve on that. But no, it's a hell of a time to be in the industry. It's a hell of a time to be writing about the industry. I mean, you do kind of wonder, if you look back 5 or 6 or 10 years, what did we all worry about? You know, the changes that we sort of had, obviously, you know, things like BSE and foot and mouth aside, it had been such an incredibly stable industry really for so many years. But now there's just so much going on every day. Farming's in the media, the mainstream media. You know, it's being, I think, as Minette Batters said this week, you know, it's unprecedented the amount of attention that agriculture is getting among the public and politicians and the mainstream media. So it's kind of, if you like, it's really our time to shine. And you know, people are interested in what we do. So you know, it's great to have an opportunity to write and to try and explain to the public what it is that we do.
I'm doing an end of year quiz in a couple of weeks with Guy Smith, Emily Norton, Gareth Wynne-Jones, and Johan Tasker. And we'll be talking about 2020 generally in that. But for you, what have been your headlines of 2020? And there have been many.
I mean, I guess from a farmer's point of view, it's been remarkable how food has come back to the centre of the national conversation, hasn't it? You know, around the COVID and the lockdown and panic buying. I think you've got to say, you know, people value food more than ever. You know, it's just became a national obsession along with toilet roll for a couple of months, didn't it? And I think it's great. It's not, no, the circumstances are clearly, you know, not great, but it's great that, you know, that reminder to people about how important food is. has come at this really critical time for farming industry. And of course, it's been great as well to see the support for British farming. Look at the million signatures that the NFU got on their food standards petition, and the 90,000 emails that they got sent to MPs, and other such things. So it's the headline for me would be the support, the importance that the public clearly put in their food supply, which I think they've taken for granted for obviously many years, and the support that they have for British farming, which is great. I guess on the other side, I think, again, with my slightly cynical political looking hat on, the absolute failure of leadership, political leadership, not just in Britain, but it is an unedifying spectacle, isn't it, when you see your elected leaders, frankly, doing us as voters such a disservice in really failing, in my view, to really take their office seriously. You hope that your leaders would act in a responsible and professional and just a grown-up fashion. And 2020 has really shown, I think, for the large part, that perhaps we do not have the leaders that we deserve as a country. And it would be nice if, in future we could sort of see the level of political debate return to a slightly more adult fashion, which I think we would all welcome.
We always finish the show with the same two questions, and I'll be interested to hear specifically from you what your answers are going to be for this. But the first one is, if you had a message for the public, what would it be and why?
Well, I would say, to the public, the best thing that you guys can do to support your British farmers, which I feel is something that the vast majority of the British public do want to do, is to buy British produce, to look out there and to look for the red tractor, to shop in your local farm shop, and to really support British farmers, because we do produce some of the highest quality food in the world. And it'd be great if you could talk to your MPs and that sort of thing, to let them know that you'd like them to create policy which is favourable to British food and farming. But supporting British farmers at the till is really the biggest ask that we can have of you. And if you do that, we'll continue to produce the really high quality food that hope that you enjoy.
And finally, a message for your fellow farmers.
We are our own best advocates. There's an awful lot of passion out there. Please, I would urge anyone who feels that they perhaps don't have the courage or the confidence to become more engaged. If they think that someone else should do it, or that they're worried that they'll come off badly, do get more engaged. It's the most important time, I think, for our industry ever, the next few years, and it's all still to play for. And especially younger farmers out there, it's our futures that we're fighting for at the moment. We're all in it together. And the only other thing I'd say is we need to play as just one team. And although there's an awful lot of incredibly passionate people within our industry, and we all have our different ways of doing things, I think we need to pull towards the main goal, which is trying to safeguard the future of British agriculture. And we don't want to sort of get bogged down and go down rabbit holes, which frankly just confuses the public, and it confuses policymakers who, bless them, don't have the best grasp of the issues that they're presiding over. So that would be my message. Just get out there and do everything we can to safeguard the future of our industry.
Well, we'll leave it there. But Joe, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been a real pleasure to meet you, and it's like listening to an audio version of your column. That's very kind. Hopefully, slightly more intelligible than my. It's Farmer Focus. Leicestershire farmer and farming columnist Joe Stanley. Next time, it's episode 100, and so what better time than that to look back through the episodes over the past 4 years. I'll be joined by 2 Meet the Farmers listeners to explore the first 99 episodes. After that, we'll have our big farming quiz of the year, and then there'll be a break until next year. So lots more to come, but until then, have a great week, and I'll see you next time.